welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents. Today, first, before we get started, I want to thank all of our listeners and our viewers because Blackbird Writers Presents could not have become an award-winning podcast without you. Today, I am speaking with John A. Hoda. He is a former police officer and insurance fraud investigator, and for the past 26 years, he's been a successful private investigator. Many of his cases made the headlines of the Philadelphia Inquirer and the New Haven Register. John is also an award-winning writer with 18 books under his belt. His FBI agent Marcia O'Shea series and the Milford Cozy Mystery series, and 4 nonfiction how-tos about private investigating. Today, we're discussing the first FBI agent Marcia O'Shea book, Odessa on the Delaware, and one of his more recent books, Hyde, which I'm so curious about. So welcome, John.
Well, thank you for that glowing introduction. I hope I can earn it with your listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. So it's clear that your degree in criminology has been put to very good use here. When did you decide to write fiction? What is your origin story?
Well, and it didn't do with crime writing or criminology. It was actually a baseball book, originally titled Fantasy Baseball, and it's now been retitled Second Chance at Bat, and also it has a new cover on it as well. This happened back in like 2010. For years, Tracy, I've been a storyteller around, the cooler, at parties, wherever. And I had the idea for a story, and I had the beginning and I had the end, but I didn't have anything in the middle. So my son and I are at a ball game down in Philadelphia, where we're both originally from. And there in the program was my answer to the middle. And I start jabbering at my son and da, 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 da. And he says, what the hell are you talking about? And I said, well, this is a story that's been kicking around in my head. Now I got the middle, and now I know how the beginning goes in the middle, and now it goes to the end. And he says, very astutely, and also being my son, said, oh, you don't know how to write.
Oh.
So I said, well, thanks a lot. Appreciate that. And at the time I didn't, but I said I would learn. And the first thing I did was I bought a book titled Writing Fiction for Dummies by Peter Economy and Randy Inger Manson. And it is a dummies book, no doubt, but it is excellent. And it gave me the beginnings of how I can craft a fiction novel and the things that would go into it. So how to create a storyline, 3-act structure, a synopsis, an outline, if I'm an outliner, which I am, and what needed to be done, in the post-production with developmental editors and proofreaders and a good cover designer. But they didn't cover the marketing aspect of it, which was fine. I just needed to get this book out there, which I did.
I love the dummies books, though. They're great for that. They're great for learning a thing, and they're very, very clear about the steps that you need to take to get there, right?
Exactly. And anybody thinks that they can just start typing away and thinks because they watch enough movies or read enough that they can craft a story. I think, 4 or 5 revisions later, you're going to learn, no, that's not really the case. So, but anyway.
Exactly.
So that launched in March of 12, and then life got in the way. And 6 years went by when I was finally able to reassess where I was at. And I call it a discernment process. And I looked at and I said, that writing thing that I did a couple years back, I really liked that. I really enjoyed that a lot. So as I was deciding to slowly disengage from my investigative career, I started picking up more and more time to write. And that's what I did. I wanted to have an author's career. I wanted to be an authorpreneur. And I wanted to have nonfiction books, fiction books. I wanted to have a podcast, a newsletter. And
you were ambitious.
Yeah. And 6 days a week for 6 years, that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it shows. I mean, a lot of good things happened during that time period. I learned a lot more about writing.
Mhm.
I learned that I needed more help with my writing, so I formed a study group. And the study group, we work on a craft book or two every other week, and we sit down, we go over what our exercises are, and we review them with each other weekly. I did that last. We do it on Tuesday night, so I did it last night.
Oh, that's great. So when did Odessa and the Delaware come out?
Yeah, December of 19, I believe.
19. Yeah.
19, yeah. And that came out of a thinking about a thought about an average Joe. My first book, Fantasy Baseball, was about an average Joe that got catapulted into the major leagues. And here was a guy, Joe Sully Sullivan, that I just wanted him to get back to normal from where he was. He was a homeless vet, alcoholic, and lost his family. And that chapter with him starts off with him urinating on himself, and that's how we get started with Joe. So you get where his character arc is starting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's a really memorable character.
mhm,
And there were some other point of view characters in that book that I really enjoyed as well. Not uh, before we even get to Marcia, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, that you had some Russian bad actors
mhm, yeah.
and and I love it. How do you like to get in the head of the killers?
Well, and we'll get to Hyde in a minute, but you know, I just think that I wanted to have a point of view character with an immediacy from their that would help me see what was happening in that scene from their viewpoint.
And it
And
also builds tension, don't you think?
oh yeah, absolutely. So Bad Vlad, Vladislav Balderas was my antagonist in Odessa, and he simply was a Russian enforcer that wanted to take over the entire Philly organized crime scene. Now, I had been an insurance fraud investigator in Philadelphia back in the day, and I ran into the Russians way back then. And then I also worked with another company where I had to deal with um, those nice gentlemen in the Brighton Beach section of Brooklyn on other insurance fraud matters. So I got to know, a little bit about who I was dealing with. So I never
Mm.
forgot that, and I kept them in the back of my mind. So it wasn't very difficult for me to write both the capos or the capos of the Russian gangs as well as Bad Vlad. So yeah, it was just something that it started to come together through the outline, and I just felt that I wanted to give equal time to everybody and let the reader get a breather from one character and then move into the next, and then keep the tension moving from their different points of view.
Yeah, I love that. And so Marcia O'Shea is a really kick-ass female character,
Yeah.
obviously. And so do you have a inspiration for her?
Yes, I do. And no, it's not an old girlfriend. Uh, no. Over the years, 40 years of investigating, I had an opportunity to work alongside many excellent female investigators. So it really is, Marcia is a compilation of all the good traits of all those investigators. And then when I needed bad traits, I just looked in the mirror and wrote myself. So it was easy, to give her both sides. And to me, I feel, well, I want to be commercially successful, and writing a strong female lead was important commercially to give it a little bit of a demographic for my readership. And secondly, I just thought it offered more to work with because, she's bucking up against the boys club and, the glass ceilings that are in all major organizations, FBI being one of them. And I just thought that her character arc could really survive over uh, what was basically 7 books, because she had a cameo in my original book, Fantasy Baseball, where she was a college love interest of the first average Joe, and went on to become an FBI agent. And then later on, we pick her up again in that novel, and then again we start her off with Odessa, introducing her in Odessa. So
Right.
yeah, it was interesting, and that yeah, 5 books, 6 books directly related to her and her trials and tribulations in the bureau.
Yeah. And going back to Sully, does he come back in any of the books
Yeah,
either? Because his arc is pretty strong,
yeah,
and luckily he stops peeing on himself.
yeah.
Um,
Well, he became an average Joe at the end of the story. I mean, he regained some of his Marine Scout sniper skills when he needed them, and it was just a matter of him coming back to normal, and
mhm.
that I kind of left him there. But he owed Marcia something. So in West Reading traffic, later on, his skills come back to help her out in a cameo at the end of the book, which is very, very important there. Throughout each of the books, she meets with him occasionally at a diner, and they catch up, they talk, they see how things are coming along. So I never forget my characters. I never
Yeah.
forget them. And
That's kind of the fun thing about being an author, don't you think? I mean, you make friends with your characters,
yeah,
and it's fun to see them grow and evolve or
yeah, for sure.
change. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, speaking of evolving characters, I'll just move right into the cozies then, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So at the end of I think the last book related to Marcia was Elm City Towers, and in there it is a story about a 20-year-old unsolved killing where DNA then exonerates the killer. So actually, it becomes then unsolved because DNA exonerates who the police thought it was. And a podcaster decides to take up the mantle and start investigating this case with a closed Facebook group and access to Freedom of Information records. And 2 people come from Milford. Now, the Milford is like the Simpsons Springfield. It could be any Milford, any state, but it's basically the Northeast. And Gwendolyn Strong, high school, a grade kindergarten school
Elementary.
teacher, yeah, kindergarten school teacher, and her daughter, who's a true crime junkie, go to New Haven for a girls' weekend to get involved in this mystery of who really did it, and it's from that Gwen discovers that she has a knack for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And my tagline for Gwen is everything she learned about solving mysteries, she learned in kindergarten.
Yeah,
So
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But so let's be clear for the readers and or for our viewers. This is the Milford Elementary books. It's the Gwendolyn Strong series, right?
yes, yeah.
Right.
So I introduce her at the end of Elm City Towers with Marcia, and that becomes essentially her origin story for becoming an investigator, going into an amateur sleuth, I should say, in her own 4 book series. And I also have a 3 book, 3 short story compilation there as well. So yeah, Gwen was a lot of fun to write, and
So, and you're linking all of your books a little
yeah,
bit. I really kind of love that. I mean,
oh yeah,
you hear about authors writing in like Easter eggs,
hmm
like I don't know, adding a something from one book and
hmm
into another, and but not like so much the characters carrying through. I love that.
Well, if you have a moment, I will tell you about the Easter egg that appears in every single one of my fiction novels.
Sure.
And it is Dot, the waitress, and she is, or server, I guess is the right word these days. And she serves breakfast, lunch, or dinner throughout all of the territories of all my books. So it's always the eponymous Dot. And she asks the customer, and this has been passed on from Marcia O'Shea, so it passes on from book to book to book, if they would want whipped cream on their whatever it is that they're having, rice pudding, waffles, whatever. And the answer always is yes. In life, you can never get enough whipped cream.
Well, for sure.
And that's right. And it goes, and every single book has that little cameo with Dot and that sentence. And I just love that little Easter egg in there in all of my books because it just, well, investigators eat. You know, that's the truth about investigators. They sit down, they talk over their cases over a breakfast, a lunch at the 24-hour diner. And, and for Dot to appear, with the cup of coffee, the pot of coffee, and asking about if they want whipped cream on that is just, well, just normal for me. But,
That's so fun.
and then
But
two,
I
and
bet that
go
you
ahead.
have not, sorry to interrupt, I bet that you have not had any characters from those series um, linked to your Hyde book, which I read,
No,
which is unpublished, by
yes,
the way.
yeah,
And it's a historical Victorian thriller,
yep,
but I'll
yep,
let you talk about it
yeah.
because it's so
So
cool.
I was in the middle of writing the last book in the Gwendolyn Strong series, and I really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do next, which was strange because I'm pretty much proactive, futuristic thinker. And I was in our critique group, which is another group I belong to, which the Fairfield Scribes here in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And one of the writers was giving a synopsis of his book, and we were all commenting. And I said, "Oh, isn't that a little like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde meets Jack the Ripper?" And he says, "No, it's nothing like that at all." I said, "Okay." So the next morning, I thought about it overnight. My brain worked on it. And the next morning, I thought, let me look at that. Robert Louis Stevenson penned and published the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in January of 1886.
Mm.
And the Ripper started his reign of terror in the summer of 1888. And the zip codes, or I guess in England, the postal codes where they were literally like in walking distance of each other.
Oh, wow.
And I just said to myself, what if? What if I could mash up that iconic novella with the greatest crimes of that century? And that's what I decided to do. Now, that employed the same methodology I had learned with Marcia, with a different point of view character, but also with Gwendolyn with first person present. So I had each of my main characters, the Ripper, Jekyll, Hyde, and then a fourth character, Francine Murphy,
Right.
who, by the way, I'm told is probably the most interesting of the characters that I have, and that's quite a thing to say if I can outdo the Ripper,
Yeah.
And and I do each one of them. I wrote not rotate, but each one of them has significant ink during the course of Hyde. Now I can't give you the ending, but
Right.
originally when I was writing it, I thought of it as a standalone novel. I'm, there could be no sequel for that. So then, with no sequel, I thought, okay, it's going to be a standalone. So, given that it's that, I decided that I would try to have it traditionally published, as opposed to being indie author, which up until that point, all my other books had been independently published by yours truly.
Hmm.
So I reached out to two different publishers and five different agents, people that were very, very clear on who I wanted to see. I wanted Hyde to work with. I just felt that it was like peas and carrots with those people. And they liked it, but they rejected it. And
Right.
I said, okay, fine. But as I was going through the rejection process, which I was fine with, I understand the business enough to realize that they're not rejecting me. They're just saying, no, it's not a right fit at the right time, that I decided to then employ what's called Kickstarter. Now, if your readers are not familiar with Kickstarter, Kickstarter is a wonderful way to bring unique concepts into the world, whether it be board games or cosplay games or any other type of
Marketable product.
yeah, children's books or marketable product, right? So I went about learning about Kickstarter, and I had a Kickstarter launch. And if you remember those grainy black and white films of the rocket ship taking off from the launching pad and then tipping over on its side and then exploding, well, that was my Hyde Kickstarter. And
Oh,
yeah, and part of it was is that like any good launch sequence, you have to remember to do the launch sequence in order. And I failed to put the launch sequences in the proper order.
yeah.
So very shortly into the launch, it was only a 17-day campaign, I realized that I had hamstrung my launch and that I really caused problems with it. So
Was that in the what area? I mean, just so that maybe other people can
yeah,
learn from your,
what I failed to do was give everyone an opportunity to boost up what would be the launch with with a pre-release. I had what I thought to be a six email sequence, which would um, build up the excitement about it. And I completely left it out. So I went from letting people know that it was going to go out on a date certain, and then that dead period in between could have been the place for the
build up and
pre-release.
yeah,
Yeah. And then the other thing too was I only had one taker for the narration, which I was going to do through a voice synth company called 11 Labs. And that was a lot of work. I mean, probably as much work as if I was a narrator myself.
yeah,
And I thought, I'm not going to narrate a book just for one or two, patrons. It just didn't make sense.
right.
So the uh, the launch fizzled, blew up, whatever, and I went to lick my wounds. And so, long story short, uh, I went through a pretty serious discernment process. You know, really, if I wanted to continue writing or not. I mean, it's been a very long, laborious process of getting my books out there, getting enough people to read them, trying different marketing techniques, different campaigns. And I essentially was trying to decide how I wanted to go about doing this, if I wanted to continue doing it further. Well, from the ashes of Hyde came the desire to go back and start querying agents again. I'm using an app called Query Tracker, finding agents that would be interested in my genre and would have the capacity to be able to shop it around to various publishers. The other thing that was really exciting to me too was that during my study group, I continued to work on my craft. Whether, even though I had not written, had another book in mind, I kept working on my craft. And through it, slowly developed the ideas for another series. And I'm looking to write now, and I'm in the 30,000 words into my first novel, first one, uh, a four-book series involving the character arc of a police cadet, 21-year-old police cadet, and as she goes through the academy, her first year on a probationary patrol officer, a little later on getting her detective shield, and then actually leaving the police department and getting her private investigator's license. So it's a four-book series during that time period involving her. And the most important theme that I felt that I wanted to touch on in this book, in this series, I should say, was that, uh, and it's a little bit, personal to me, that I wanted to give, I did want to give criminal justice majors and young law enforcement officers the navigational stars to follow so that they could honor their oath and do nothing to tarnish the badge. having been in law enforcement, having been in corporate internal security and external security, I just felt that there was a lot of opportunity there to give the young people coming into the criminal justice field uh, something that they could be inspired by. And I was hoping that my writing would be inspirational to them. So, first book is titled The Oath. Next one will be the badge, go figure. Third one, the gold shield, obviously. And then the fourth one, the license. Well, you need to be licensed to be a private investigator, at least in my state. So that was the character arc for, and her name is Ashley Jansen. I set her in a New Englandy seaport town of New Roxbury, which there is no New Roxbury, but it gives you an idea that it's the rough and tumble part of a town, and definitely one where she is she getting becoming a police officer is a step up economically for her.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah.
So you have all these series and so many books, very prolific in my opinion. And I know that you are all indie
Yeah.
except for the what you're doing with Hyde right
Right.
now.
Yes, exactly.
Um, but what kind of like marketing advice can you give to other authors who are trying?
Okay. First and foremost, and this is the most important thing, is write the best damn book you can. And I'm not the first person to say that.
Oh yeah.
Almost anybody in the marketing areas for book marketing say write the best damn book you can, because if it's a lousy book, you can't put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
And so writing a damn good book could encompass, study groups, writing buddies, craft books where you read and implement the stuff yourself. Read, read, read in the genre. Then the next thing would be, if you're going to be an indie, is to really invest in a developmental edit,
Yeah.
or at least a
Copy edit.
yeah, no, along with a copy edit. So developmental edit and a copy edit. The other word is escaping me right now, which happens. It'll come to me at 2 in the morning. But and then proofread, proofread, proofread. Odessa's been proofread twice, and yet my great podcaster has found at least two or three or more, things that are
It happens.
yeah, that are edits that need to be
It
taken care of. And
happens.
I promise you, as soon as you get them to me, I will turn around with a logical copy that I have in Vellum, and I'll fix it, and then I'll re-upload it to Amazon. Um, the second thing after writing the best damn book you can is decide who you're writing for. And
Mhm.
that is a really deep philosophical question, one that you need to take a deep, long walk in the woods with. And that is, are you writing for yourself or you're writing for a market?
Yeah.
Now if you're
It's
writing,
also, I think, one of the hardest questions for writers to answer.
yeah,
And
oh,
it's
for
hard to
sure.
figure out who are those demographics.
Yeah. So honestly, I was writing my how-to books for private investigators, real clear who my target audience was there. My two sets of fiction books were try to be commercially written for people in the cozy mystery world and in the police procedural world that like to read those. And then now I'm writing for myself with the idea that if I could inspire criminal justice majors or uh, law enforcement officers to uh, not tarnish their badge and to live up to their oath, then I'm doing something,
So it's more personal profile or character study in those books, or is
yeah.
there are there crimes involved as
Oh
well?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In the original book, and the original premise for the oath is that Ashley Jensen, as an 8-year-old, witnesses a murder, and her mother and the homicide detective cajole her and coerce her into pointing out somebody from the photo array that had nothing to do with the crime. completely
Yeah.
innocent. So she's finding out now as a 21-year-old academy or in the police academy of what happened,
Right.
and she's going to try to fix that, and by starting to tell the truth. Well, guess what?
Right.
Telling the truth is going to upset the apple cart
Right.
such way. So I mean, she's going to be starting from a place of she was fast and loose with the truth anyway, growing up, and then finding out that she now wants to be truthful. It sets her on a career trajectory, which how does she navigate that? So the way that she navigates that is the way that I'm hoping that the young
Yeah.
Leos and the criminal justice majors would say, "Oh, here are some talking points that I can grab onto and I can be
Yeah.
inspired by." So.
I feel like those kinds of books, though, aren't just going to be, your audience isn't just going to be people in the criminal justice
No,
industry. It's going to
no,
be a lot of readers, people who read true
yeah.
crime, people who read mysteries and thrillers. I feel like you have a much wider audience.
Oh, I do, but that I'm not going to ignore the opportunity to use marketing within LinkedIn, which is great at identifying occupations. So somebody has a criminal justice background, I'll be able to get them into my universe. Somebody with a law enforcement background, I'll be able to get them into my universe. So fiction that inspires, I
Yeah.
think, is something that if you're trying to inspire somebody in a set of occupations, there might be some sort of what's the Venn diagram there.
Yeah.
You know, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
anyway,
for sure. Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, John, this has been a really fascinating conversation. And
fast.
yes, I know it seems like it goes so fast. Where can our viewers and our
Mhm.
listeners find your books?
Okay, everything's on Amazon. I made that decision this year, 2024, because I just wanted the readers to have the most frictionless way to access my books, both in print and in ebook and in
Mhm.
Kindle Unlimited. Also, the first in series, Milford Elementary and Odessa in the Delaware, are now also in uh, the audio with Amazon. What's that called?
Audible.
Audible. Yeah, ding,
Yep.
ding, ding. So now they're in Audible, and so they're available too. The idea being that if the people like listening to the books, and I get enough traction with that, then I'll commission those two narrators to finish the rest of those series, one book at a time. But
Yeah.
yeah, but definitely. And that's how they would find it. The easy way to find me is John at johnhoda.com, JOHNHODA.com. Yes, I will answer anybody who said, yes, I saw you on Tracy's podcast, and I'll be more than happy to give them some time if they need it, if they have a question or two.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting.
All right.
And thank you again, listeners, that we love knowing that you're out there and you are making us an award-winning podcast by just being there. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.